From having creepy feelings to being haunted by some little man, these are the most terrible OnlyFans horror stories. Because behind the glittering facade of this content-sharing platform, there are tales of exploitation, unexpected challenges, and individuals who found themselves entangled in the web of OnlyFans nightmares. However, get prepared for the shadows lurking in the corners of this seemingly glamorous world in OnlyFans nightmares. Story 1. Growing up without a lot of money, I never thought I'd own my own house. Then I started my OnlyFans last summer, and the money came pouring in almost faster than I could count it. I closed on a small but comfortable place with a nice yard and a porch back. It was my dream house, and I couldn't have been happier. Over the course of a few months, my dream became a nightmare. Starting an OnlyFans was a spur-of-the-moment decision I made. I was unemployed, drowning in debt, living with my parents, and overall felt like I'd hit a wall in life at only 23 years old. I'd read an article where it said the average woman on OnlyFans made $800 a month, which would at least let me start paying off my credit cards. Apparently, while $800 is the average, some girls do much better, including my account. I made $400 the first day, and by the end of the month, I was already out of debt and starting to save. My account was all about tasteful and artistic expression. I got into photography in college, so I already had a decent setup. Once I moved into the new house, I set up my office in one of the bedrooms. It involved a lot of silk curtains, lace, and plush pillows. I honestly spent more time with my clothes than just chatting with fans. A lot of them were lonely guys who just seemed to need a friend, a shoulder to cry on, and artificial intimacy. One struggle I had from the start was drawing boundaries. I'm an oversharer by nature, and I found myself letting way too many details about my life slip during online conversations. I figured that the guys were harmless though, so it wouldn't be a big deal if they knew my real name or the town I lived in. I was putting fresh linens into the upstairs hall closet when I caught sight of several small piles of dust on the carpet. There was dust on some of the shelves in the closet as well. A thin film of white particles like snow had blown in and refused to melt. Food that I was positive I'd left in the fridge and pantry began disappearing. Furniture would sometimes be just slightly out of place from where I remembered moving it. I began hearing strange thumping sounds at night and creaks from deep within the house. My first assumption was that my home was haunted. I'm a very spiritual person, and I've always had a sixth sense about spirits and energy. I started burning sage regularly, walking through the house with crystals and leaving out small offerings like mini bottles of rum and brandy. Unfortunately, the weirdness only intensified as the weeks went by. I developed sleeping issues. Some nights I would wake up with the sense that I wasn't alone. I could feel a presence, or the echo of a presence at some point. I became increasingly paranoid as sleep deprivation took its toll. I was posting less and less to OnlyFans, and I could see the physical signs of my rough nights in my photos and videos. My eyes were becoming baggy, my skin was pale, and I found it harder and harder to dig up a smile or sympathy for fans who wanted to chat. I was growing more and more convinced that I was being haunted as the nights and days blurred together. My dream home felt like a prison, and I was falling behind on the mortgage since I wasn't able to work. I spent most days drifting through the halls like a dead body on the tide. Eventually, my fear turned to anger. However, this was my house, and I wasn't going to let some malignant entity scare me away. That's why, when I woke up one night to creaking coming from directly above me, I decided to face my fear. I quickly got dressed and crept out into the hall. The sound seemed to be coming from the attic, so I gently pulled open the door set in the hallway ceiling, lowered the folding stairs, and climbed up. The first thing that struck me when I opened the door to the attic was dim but clear light. I was confused, then horrified, as I looked around the cramped room. There were new light bulbs hanging from beams all around the attic. It looked like the bulbs were connected to wires that were spliced into my walls. I saw a sleeping bag on the plywood floor, a laptop, even a miniature fridge. There were thick black cords running all over the floor, connecting back to a series of small screens. I crawled into my attic and screamed when I saw what was on those screens. It was my house. Every room must have been wired with a camera. I thought of the piles of dust I'd found and realized they were from someone drilling into the ceilings above me. I felt sick and violated, but most of all I was near panic at the thought of the intruder catching me in his lair. The attic was empty for the moment, but he might return at any time. I thought of the creaking I'd heard only minutes before and wondered how I'd missed him leaving. The answer became clear when I noticed that the small window set near the ceiling was open. The invader must have been crawling out and then climbing up onto the roof. My heart almost jumped to my eyeballs when I heard footsteps above me. He was still up there. The monster was taking a cigarette break on my roof. I quickly but quietly left the attic, folding the stairs and closing the door behind me. After grabbing my phone from the nightstand, I locked myself in my master bathroom and called the police. I considered fleeing the house, but didn't want the intruder to spot me from his perch on the roof. The worst moment came when I heard thumping from the attic. Whoever was on the roof had come back inside. Thankfully, the cops arrived in less than 5 minutes. I ran downstairs to let them in, then followed behind at a safe distance as they headed towards the attic. They caught the small man stuck halfway in the window. The cops had pulled in without lights and sirens, but the creep must have noticed the cruisers at some point and tried to make a mad dash out the window back to the roof. I'm not sure what his plan was from there, but I guess he figured a 2-story jump was better than getting arrested. The 2 burly police officers dragged the home invader into the attic, and I got a good look at his face while they wrestled to cuff him. The scariest thing was how normal the creep looked. An average face with brown thinning hair. Dark eyes and a slightly hooked nose sat over a narrow chin. I wouldn't have looked twice at him if we had passed on the street, but the expression he had while the cops were on top of him will likely stick with me for the rest of my life. He was leering at me as my head poked up from the stairs. His mouth was open in an idiotic grin, his tongue was out, and his lips were moving back and forth over his teeth. I would find out later that he had hundreds of hours worth of footage of me from the cameras around the house. He'd been in the attic for weeks. What was most chilling, though, was what the cops found on his phone. There were a dozen videos of me sleeping taken from up close. That presence I thought I'd felt some nights. It was the creep having just left my room, where he'd stood over my bed, watching me and recording me, probably with his tongue out and his mouth peeled back just like when he was arrested. The police also found a copy of my house key in the man's possessions. At some point, while following me around town, he'd managed to swipe my keys, copy them, and then return them before I could notice. At first I couldn't believe it, but then I remembered how convenient it was to make copies. Now before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, Top Scares, where we tell scary and horror stories. If you are brave enough, don't forget to click on the like button and comment. Let us know if you enjoy these stories and what stories you want next. Story 2. My name is Beatrice, and I've been on OnlyFans for about a year now. At first it was just for fun, like a way to make some extra money on the side, but as I started getting more subscribers, I began to take it more seriously. It wasn't long before I started making more money from my account than I was for my day job. As a matter of fact, things went smoothly. My subscribers were mostly respectful, and I never felt like my safety was in danger, but all that changed a few weeks ago. A new subscriber named The Keeper texted me, saying something like, "I really want to marry you." I jokingly said, "Yes, honey, let's have a digital wedding after you send me a good tip." And then he said, "Meet me, and I will give you everything and send a random address." I said, "Sorry, I cannot meet you in real life." Then he said, in all caps, "I will make sure to find you and marry you myself." At this point, it got really creepy, and I said, "Please unsubscribe me. I will never marry a loser like you." After that, we both stopped texting each other, and I immediately blocked his username, and everything went back to normal. One day, I was in the middle of shooting a video when I heard a knock on my front door. I paused the camera and went to answer it. When I opened the door, I found a man standing there. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a shaved head. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans, and his eyes were hidden behind a pair of dark sunglasses. "Can I help you?" I asked. The man didn't say anything. Instead, he just handed me an envelope and turned to leave. I opened the envelope and found a note inside it that read, "I know who you are, I know what you do, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too." I felt a sharp pain in my stomach as I read the note. Was this some kind of sick joke, or was someone really trying to blackmail or play a fast one on me? I tried to shake off the feeling and went back to filming, but I couldn't concentrate. Every time I hear a noise, I became afraid and never at rest. Every time I got a new message from a subscriber, I wondered if it was him. The next few days were a blur. I tried to keep up with my regular routine, but I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if he was watching me. I couldn't just shake off the feeling that I was being followed and that he was always one step ahead of me. It wasn't until a week later that things came to a head. I was walking home from the grocery store when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw the man from the other day. He was walking towards me, his eyes fixed on mine. "You think you can just hide behind your screen, don't you?" he said to me, with his voice low and menacing. "You think you can do whatever you want and no one will ever find out?" I tried to back away, but he was too fast. He grabbed me by the arm and pulled me towards him. I could smell his breath, hot and sour, on my face. "You're going to regret ever starting that OnlyFans account," he said. "You're going to regret ever showing your face to the world." He let go of me and disappeared into the night. I stood there, shaking, and tears streaming down my face. I knew then that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep living in fear, wondering when he would strike again. The next day, I deleted my OnlyFans account, cut off all contact with my subscribers, and deleted my social media profiles. I moved to a new city, changed my name, and started a new life. But even now, after many years, I still can't shake the feeling that he's out there watching me, waiting for his chance to strike. I still have nightmares about that night, and I still woke up in a cold sweat wondering if he's found me again. I thought OnlyFans would be a way to make some extra money. I never thought it would turn into a horror story. After that traumatic experience, my life changed completely. I went from being an online content creator to living in fear, afraid to even show my face in public. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if he was still watching me. Now, if you think this video isn't scary, you can go check out the next one on your screen. 3 terrifying true restaurant horror stories. Go watch it now if you are brave enough.